Hey guys, I'm here today with a huge request. Top 10 science fiction hidden gems in the JRPG realm. But I want to focus on the ones that are fully science fiction, not the ones that combine elements of it with medieval fantasy or steampunk. And with that clarified, let's begin. Number 10. Metal Max Xeno. This is a turn-based RPG released on PS4 and Vita, although the Vita version stayed in Japan. You control Thales in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity is almost extinct. A supercomputer created thousands of machines a century ago that destroyed civilization. The remnants of this powerful AI are there to kill off the rest of the humans, some of them slowly building a new resistance group. Thales will travel around by foot and inside his tank to find other survivors and destroy the machines. There's only one futuristic base where you can talk to your allies and customize your party members and their tanks. Characters can equip up to 3 different weapons and a variety of armor or accessories. You'll use skill points to distribute to sort of a job system which is also related to the tanks they'll use. In fact, the tank customization is somewhat similar but way deeper and more complex. Since this game plays around with elemental strengths and weaknesses, it's hard to stick to just one weapon for your tank. That's because bosses often have elemental barriers that you need to destroy first in order to do some real damage. This is a very challenging RPG thanks to these mechanics, but worth it. You will also be able to explore ruins in human form with random encounters around. These parts are far easier than the tank exploration and their machine bosses. It also has great graphics and a fantastic soundtrack. There's a remake of this game on PS4, PC and Switch, but I don't recommend it. Difficulty increased considerably up to the point of being broken. If you still want to give it a try, then be my guest. Number 9. Crimson Tears. 3 humanoid bioweapons are in search for their creator since their home base has been destroyed. Their mission will make them question their origins as well as the company Arma who develops their kind. This action RPG developed by Dream Factory and published by Capcom is similar to a dungeon crawler with roguelike elements. The areas in each dungeon will be randomly generated and you'll advance through several floors until you reach the boss. You can play as any of the 3 androids you want, each controlling differently, but you can't just switch to them at any time. You can only play as one, and if they are defeated, you'll come back to base to select another one and start from the beginning of the dungeon. This kind of secret warehouse will be your base of operations where you'll be able to customize your abilities and skill trees. Outside, there's a little town that's slowly being rebuilt by people often in need of items or materials, which means there's a lot of side quests here, but most of them are fetch quests. There's also a shop where you can buy stuff as well as some of those materials. Combat in this game is real time, as in a beat 'em up or hack and slash. Since the character models are large, it won't be the fastest paced action game, but it's good enough. Overall, it's kinda repetitive, but the visuals, the combat and its RPG system will keep you entertained. Give it a try, it's a good time. Number 8. Dead End Request. Available on PS4, Switch and Steam, this is a very unique RPG. It's the story of 2 game developers that abandoned a virtual MMORPG until one of them mysteriously disappeared, Sheena. The other developer, Arata, comes back to the servers 1 year later, only to find Sheena herself trapped in the game. It'll be up to both to figure out from their respective areas to get her out of there and find out who's controlling the game servers. I said areas because the gameplay will have you playing with both characters. As Sheena, you'll go around the MMORPG's designed areas, ruins or dungeons while fighting in turn-based battles. Other girls will join you as you make progress. Combat here is quite interesting. It plays in turns, but you can plan your attacks and positions to throw kinda like bowling moves to damage several enemies around. It's quite fun, but it also can be somewhat tricky to exploit. Now, playing as Arata is basically a visual novel. Among tons of dialogue, you'll have to find out clues for Sheena to be able to move forward and complete the game. While the story is rich with intrigue and some dark stuff here and there, it's also accompanied by some funny slice of life every now and then. There's a sequel to it that I haven't played, also available on PS4, Switch and Steam. Number 7. Robo Trek. It's the planet Paradise Star many years in the future, although in the localization it was called Quintinix, because the game was developed by Quintet and published by Enix. A bunch of idiots called the hackers start attacking society, so it's the job of your main character to create the robots and fight them. He'll do that literally. Your goal is to actually create, customize and train 3 different robots. Not only that, it's also up to you to create their equipment by using scraps you find out there. And by using program points, you can increase the abilities or attributes of your robots. Battles will be played in turns, however, only the robots can fight. Everybody will move around in a small grid-based area that obviously influences the attacks and their reach. You gotta wait for an active time battle bar to fill up so you can move on your turn. But only one robot can participate. You can use up a turn to switch to any of the other 2 robots if you have them available. There's also a gauge influencing the flow of battle. Depending on what you do, it'll use most of it and enemies will attack in a row. It's a creative system for its time, I'll give it that. I think this is a fun game that barely anyone talks about. Number 6. Lunar Knights. So there's a series called Boktai by Kojima Productions. The first 3 were released on the Game Boy Advance. This 4th entry, while still part of the same universe, is different. It's a science fiction adventure with 2 different protagonists, Lucian, a vampire who is also a vampire hunter, and Aaron, a solar knight in training. This is an action RPG and these 2 guys control differently. Lucian fights with a blade and can also transform into a vampire bound by a transmitter. Aaron fights with a variety of guns, most of them greatly damaging undead enemies. Both characters can fuse with their summoned creature known as Terrenial, which helps a lot when fighting the vampire bosses. Actually, the goal of the game is to defeat these bosses and then send them into space by playing through a minigame controlled by the stylus. It's alright, not the best mechanic, but fun nonetheless. There's also a weather system and the environment will change depending on it. You can check it out regularly thanks to the thermometer, which measures it. This is a great hidden gem exclusive to the Nintendo DS. No, you don't need to play any of the other Boktai games to get into this one. Story is standalone and the game's easy to get into. Number 5. Raid Gigant. Available on PS Vita and Steam, Raid Gigant is a dungeon crawler in first person but with a twist in combat. Aliens called Gigants destroy the world and humans have to live in refuges or bases. They will rely on 3 different heroes, especially on Ichiya, capable of killing the Gigants but at a really high cost. So the story will be carried out within 3 arcs, 3 chapters each with their own protagonist and party members. Like I said, it's a dungeon crawler but with no random encounters, you just walk around and avoid the enemies if you want to. The biggest feature of this game is its combat. You play in turns, but with the ability of saving moves or waiting to execute better strategies against enemies. Only the 3 playable characters can participate in battles and you switch around their turns to decide who's the best option to attack next. But the highlight here is the rhythm game during combat. You heard that right, the rhythm game. You see, every protagonist, like Ichiya for example, will enter a slash beat mode. You'll have to keep up with clicking buttons at the rhythm of every beat to make massive damage to the boss or even kill them. I like this combat, it's quite original as I've barely seen anything similar before. Overall, this is a solid game and one of the very few dungeon crawlers in first person I actually like. Number 4. Super Robot Wars Original Generation 1 and 2. This duology on the GBA belongs to a long-running series that started as a spin-off, well, more like a crossover, but that's a really long story. You don't need to play any other game in this series to understand these two. It's a war out there between humans as usual, because they all want to fight the aliens in their own way. Most of the characters in this game, including your playable characters, will belong to different organizations actually. At first you select between 2 protagonists, but they'll end up in the same team eventually. It's a really solid story, this one. Gameplay wise, the party will revolve much on the type of weapons that you equip your mechs with. During the first 10 hours or so, you'll have no issues whatsoever no matter what you do, but it'll start getting more and more challenging, so not knowing the ups and downs of this equipment system spells real trouble. I actually messed up my first playthrough because I didn't pay proper attention. It's deep and complicated, but nothing a few tips online can't help you with. And the map design is as in nearly every Super Robot Strategy RPG. They look bland and with barely any terrain affected areas, but they also diversify in locations for a change. These badass animations can be skipped if you want to, but they're worth watching at least a few times. This is a great duology that I strongly recommend with an incredible soundtrack as well. Number 3. Arno Surge. I wish this game was as popular as the Artonelico trilogy. Those three mix some medieval fantasy elements, but they're mainly sci-fi RPGs, and it's not like they're that popular. But Surge is perhaps the most unknown of them all, and it's the prequel in the series. I've talked about this game many times in the past, so I'll be quick. Humanity can't live on Earth anymore and now lives on spaceships, traveling the galaxy in search for a new world. Two main characters that you'll be switching to regularly lead the adventure. Each has a singer, later known as Ravatails, magical girls with powerful abilities that create song magic to tear enemies apart. And in this battle system, while the Ravatail casts her magic, you can actually kill every enemy in the area if you want to in just one fight. Basically, small hordes of them appear and you create button mashing combos with your main attacker until it's the enemy's turn. You have to take damage directed at your girl to protect her and so on. It's a very fun combat despite being somewhat repetitive. Finally, like in the Artonelico trilogy, your character can delve into the subconsciousness of the ladies to play out small visual novel segments with some decision making. These will help them create better song magic for battles. This game is on PS3 and PS Vita. A modern remaster came out a couple of years ago, but only in freaking Japan. Number 2. Relayer. Relayer takes inspiration from the Super Robot War series, as it's also a strategy RPG with mechs. It tells the story of Terra in search for her sister and missing memories throughout space. She joins the GT Labs, an organization in charge of star children just like her, natural-born warriors capable of piloting the mechs. Same mechs they'll use to fight the Relayers, an alien species that's out there to destroy planets and galaxies for different reasons. While the story and character design may appear somewhat silly, trust me, the plot is just not. It's serious, with even some unexpected dark twists and political dramas. Like many tactical JRPGs, you'll watch a bunch of scenes, play out a mission, and then return to base. Here, you can sometimes watch small scenes with some characters, buy and sell stuff, increase the power of your weapons with money, etc. Later, you'll be able to increase the stats of your mechs as well. Each character has a skill tree known as a space cube and a pseudo job system once you complete each cube, but you won't be able to change jobs anymore after choosing between two of them. Maps are grid-based and will take place around the stars in space, but also in ruins or bases around the universe. In the latter, terrain might matter a bit. Often you'll control guest characters who will only join you for that particular mission, and the amount of party members per map might also change depending on this. As you can see, the gun types can attack from afar and the melee ones up close. There's no magic here, but there's things like healing spells, buffs and debuffs. This is such an underestimated game. It's one of those that starts kinda slow, somewhat repetitive and dull, but the more you play, the more its story and combat pulls you in until you just can't stop playing it. Number 1. Lost Dimension. I've talked about this game 10,000 times already, but I had to pick one of the big RPGs in this channel as number 1. It's on PS3, PS Vita, and yes, on Steam as well. Sometimes I think of it as an underrated game instead of a hidden gem, but unless it gets remastered one day, it'll probably and unfortunately keep being an obscure game. Anyway, you control a bunch of soldiers in the future where a powerful entity known as the End will destroy the world, unless these soldiers stop him in time. But to do that, they'll have to traverse a long tower with no means of escape until they face the End. To make matters even worse, a few of these soldiers are actually traitors, and the End will force the protagonist to determine who they are before moving on to the next floor. Regardless of if they're traitors or not, the party will be forced to decide who gets deleted out of the party, and they're gone forever. Great story and narrative here, full of intrigue, and that intrigue is composed by a gameplay mechanic which relies on talking to your allies to find out more about them. Eventually you'll have to enter a minigame to determine if they're the good guys or not. And finally, the combat. It's a strategy RPG where you can move your characters around in a limited range. Because of the stress, characters will slowly go berserk and you need either items or wait turns to prevent that. Other than that, they can attack with guns and also use a plethora of abilities. Some abilities, one character can absorb them from the party member you decided to off at the end of each floor. This is an excellent game and you already know it's very recommended. I also have a bunch of honorable mentions. Exist Archive, I've covered this one to death already on PS4 and PS Vita. 2 rare and expensive JRPGs on the DS, Sola to Robo from CyberConnect 2, developers of Fuga Melodies of Steel, and Endless Frontier, part of the Super Robot Wars series but quite different from them, with some guest characters like Cosmos from Xenosaga. Oh, and the Front Mission series, but I don't think they're as hidden gems anymore. Plenty more science fiction hidden gems are there, but these are my picks for today. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!